Cheap, thrifty, frugal, whatever you want to call it, that's me. If there's a way for me to find a deal or save myself some money, I'm going to do it, assuming it's legal and ethical. And self-editing a book, whether you're self-editing a novel or you're editing a picture book, is just one of many money-saving tips for authors that I've learned over the years. It can save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars when your work finally gets in the hands of a professional editor. Because remember, at the end of the day, most editors are paid by the hour. So today, I'm going to give you 10 tips for self-editing your book. Number 1, change things up. If you wrote most or all of your story on your desktop, then try to do your first round of edits on your mobile device. Or, like I do, print it out. I find there's just something relaxing about holding a physical copy of my manuscript and marking it up from there. Number 2, take bite-sized pieces. Don't worry about editing your entire manuscript. Just take it chapter by chapter. Or if you're self-editing a picture book, just take it page by page. It's a lot less intimidating when you think of it that way. Reviewing just a few pages at a time compared to the whole story can really help you relax and enjoy the self-editing process a bit more. Tip number 3, separate your editing. There are different types of editing that need to be done. First, you've got your developmental editing, which is your overall storyline and content edits. Next, you have line editing. This is where you deal more on the paragraph level and the overall flow from sentence to sentence within your paragraphs. Next, you have your copy edits. This is more on a sentence level and focuses on things like punctuation and grammar. And then finally, you have your proofreading. This is where you find all those little minor things and typos that might have snuck through during your other editing phases. Now, if you'd like me to do more in-depth videos on each of these phases of editing, let me know down in the comments. But you see how if you take your editing one phase at a time, it can be a lot less overwhelming than just looking at it as, oh, I've got all this editing that needs to be done. The next tip is to highlight and make notes. Now, I personally like to color code my highlights depending on what type of edit phase I'm in. So for example, if I'm in the middle of developmental edits, then I like to use pink to highlight areas that I need to expand upon more. So if I have a character in a scene and it's the only time I mention them, but then later on they end up being a pretty integral part of the end of the book, then I'll highlight their initial appearance in pink as a reminder for me to go back and expand their character storyline a bit so it correlates better with the end of the book. I also like to use blue to denote any contradiction in my story. Now that's typically not something as major as one time I say they have blonde hair and the next time I say they have brown hair, but perhaps in one spot I mention how shy and timid a character is, but then later on I have them doing something that's brazen and dangerous. While yes, this could be part of the overall character's growth, something to go from timid to dangerous is typically going to seem unrealistic, but I at least want to highlight it so that way I can go back and reread it and look at it in a little bit more detail. My next tip is to find a few good beta readers. Now, just 1 or 2 trusted beta readers can honestly be a true godsend. And no, your mom, your spouse, your best friend, they don't count in this aspect. You want someone who loves the genre you're writing in, but also doesn't have any kind of emotional connection to you on a personal level. These betas will be able to tell you honestly, firsthand, what their experience was with your book. How did they feel about certain characters? What did they think about your overall storyline and plot? And in the end, just overall, what was the experience? Did they enjoy your book? The next tip is to find a critique partner, or more than one. A critique partner is someone who's going to read your book and give you their honest feedback in regards to the structure and the content of your story. Now, a critique partner will almost always be another author and hopefully one that's at least somewhat familiar with the genre that you're writing in. This way they know common tropes and themes that are prevalent in your genre. Now, critique partners, unlike betas, are going to be looking at your book from the business side, the creative side. They can look for those little things that readers just don't even realize they're expecting. For example, a critique partner could point out a great place in your story to throw in an unexpected twist. Or if you're writing a mystery, they can tell you a spot would be a great place to throw in a red herring. Betas wouldn't know to suggest these little nuances, but it can really make the difference between a good book and a book that readers just can't put down. Now, it should be noted that typically a critique partner relationship is reciprocal, meaning that you'll end up critiquing their work as well when it's done. My next tip, and this is a doozy, don't get hung up on school grammar. You know when you were in school and you were told never to start a sentence with and or because? Well, that's fine with scholarly writing, but when you're writing a story, give yourself permission to break some of those rules. Just remember that you're writing for your reader and not your high school English teacher or your university professor. Just ask yourself this: how many of my high school English teachers or university professors are best-selling authors? Tip number 8 is set yourself a deadline. Just like when it comes to writing, when you're self-editing, it's a lot easier to stay on track and avoid both procrastination as well as eliminate the chase for the perfect version of your manuscript if you set yourself a deadline and stick to it. Knowing that you have until Friday to get all the self-editing done and then it goes to the final editor can really help prioritize and plan out your editing process. For example, Monday and Tuesday are for developmental editing and rewrites, Wednesdays for line editing, Thursday for proofreading and final tweaks, and then it goes to your editor on Friday. You see how a structure like this can both help you relax and stay focused, as well as give you something to look forward to. Now, if you like the last 8 tips, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel and click your bell icon so you get alerted each and every time I put out a new video, just like this one. Now, tip number 9, believe it or not, is that there's not just one way to edit. Yeah, I know I just gave you 8 different tips based on editing after the fact, but just like with writing, there are more than one way to self-edit. Like many authors, I like to self-edit my books after writing the first draft. But that said, there are just as many authors that like to write in the dark and self-edit their stories as they go. They make the changes right then when they see them, whether it's plot-driven, character development, or even just a simple typo. They then do what's called looping, which is when they go back periodically and reread certain chapters and sections of their book. Now, I don't say this to confuse you, but to rather inspire you to try out other methods and see what works best for you in your process. Perhaps you'll find a hybrid version that's most ideal. Maybe using the looping method during the first draft of writing and then do a final round of edits the traditional way. Only you can determine which works best for you in your writing process. And tip number 10 is to make a cheat sheet, also known as a style sheet. Take notes on important things that can help your future editor, your critique partner, as well as help future you for when you're writing your next book. For example, listing your characters' names and nicknames. In my book, One Bad Call, the main character, Cameron, has the nickname Cam, but her dad always called her Kiddo and her mom always calls her Hunt. These are great things to note in the style sheet so that later I can go back and do a search on these variations of her name and make sure that it's consistent with who is calling her by what nickname. Perhaps your spidey senses go off when it comes to a certain element of your story and you just can't seem to pinpoint what's wrong with it or how to fix it. Or maybe your dialogue just sounds off to you, or you don't like the flow of a certain scene. These are all things that really should go inside your style sheet so both your editor as well as your critique partner can take a better look at them and make their suggestions. Now, from an overall writing standpoint, do you use the same word over and over again? Like, do you use the word that way too many times? Well, if you do, that's good to know, and you can help yourself address that issue in the future by putting it in your style sheet, as well as let your editor know what to be on the lookout for. Now, this style sheet is going to grow and morph as you continue with your writing career. As you get feedback from editors, you'll be able to update your style sheet with any known issues that you're prone to have in your writing. Again, this will help both you in your future writing as well as your future self-editing. Now, once you get a grip on these issues and stop making them, then you can remove them from your style sheet. That said, I never delete anything from my style sheet. I just put a strike through on it. This ensures that I always have it in the back of my mind and allows me to do my best to not relapse and make those same mistakes again. Now, what if in the process of self-editing your book, you discover, well, your characters just aren't that likable? Well, check out this video right here that I did where I give you 7 tips to make your characters more likable. Now, if you've already seen that video, or maybe you don't have that problem, then check out this video right here that the fine folks over at YouTube says is perfect for you. I'll catch you in one of these videos, and remember to write right.